Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Monday evening. It's lovely to have you in for another episode of the Prime Time Show. We got a lot to talk about with this draft weekend, and I have a cautionary tale having to do with the Titans quarterback situation, a trade made earlier today that does not impact the Titans necessarily, but does serve as the kind of cautionary draft tale that you hear horror stories about and that multiple franchises with multiple quarterbacks have been through thus far. So we'll talk about that together throughout the course of the evening. We are always appreciative when you guys show up and show out the way that you typically do. We will discuss at length together which 2023 quarterback prospect we are buying stock most on heading into 2024. I'm sure many of you are biased. I'm sure many of you are going to say Levis, and that's just fine. But, I think that there is some discussion to be had between Stroud, between Levis, and Richardson in particular. I guess you could throw Bryce Young in the mix as well, since he was drafted first overall. But there are three of them in the AFC South, so it's worth taking a look at those three specifically. We will skip in case you missed it tonight because Bert is on assignment in Las Vegas and is not with us this evening. So instead of pinning that on Jake or Parker, I said, okay, it's we could all do with a little less Bert in our lives. So we'll just take a rain check on next Mondays in case you missed it and enjoy our time together. Before we get started, need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, no matter where you are spending your evening with us. By the way, a reminder, we are at 7 p.m. now on a regular basis for the Primetime Show. So make sure that if you weren't aware of that you are aware of that right now. But as the time changes, nothing about the sharing process changes. We always need you guys to share this show. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet it in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you're on Facebook Live, you can share now to public in the bottom left-hand corner, if you would be so kind. YouTube, Twitch, it's real easy. All you got to do is subscribe to the channel. That way you'll get a notification every time we pop on live. And once you're here, you like the video, just as turnkey as that. Zeph Smith says we don't get to see a shirtless Bert. Well, tonight sucks. Well, if your night was highlighted by the opportunity to see a giant, fleshy, pink and red male living in a basement-like situation shirtless, if your entire evening, Zeth, was focused and predicated on that, I would first ask you to realign your priorities on a regular basis. And I would say, it's my great pleasure to be able to disappoint you because not all of us need shirtless Bert in our life. And I see entirely more of Bert on a regular basis than I absolutely need to. Either way, let's go ahead and start the show on this Monday. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising, and I'm proud as always to be presented to you. You know this by the wonderful people at Two Rivers Ford. The South's most trusted Ford dealer is Two Rivers Ford. Quality American-made Ford vehicles. Award-winning customer service. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. Zen Sports. Betting just got better at Zen Sports. They are there to get you in on all the action. We got Stanley Cup playoff games, a couple of game ones and a couple of game twos. As a matter of fact, you can get in on the action of all your favorite major sports with zensports.com. And Truma Fitness, the best place to work out for the best version of you. Go to trumafitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. They will put you in position to succeed. Jody Newell says it correctly. 2 more nights and the wondering is over for round 1. Yes, I know you guys are tired of many of the same conversations, many of the same hypotheticals, and the finish line is very much in sight. But before we talk about the finish line, and instead of entertaining more draft hypotheticals, it is worth taking a look at the latest and biggest news in the NFL, and that is the story of Zach Wilson. Now, why would a Titans fan give a single solitary damn about Zach Wilson, the former 2nd overall pick by the New York Jets in the 2021, I believe, NFL draft? Why would a Titans fan give a single solitary damn about Zach Wilson, you might be asking yourself, and it's a fair question to be asking yourself because Zach Wilson has precious little to do with the Titans. But Zach Wilson does speak to a larger issue around the NFL, and that is quarterbacks who get ruined by their franchises. The Zach Wilson experiment is somewhat the fault of Zach Wilson, but it reminds me of so many other horror stories that we've seen from quarterbacks past. And why I bring this up within the context of Will Levis is that this is how tough it is to nail the draft. It's not just about the draft, because Zach Wilson is a prospect. There was never really any doubt. Nobody really questioned the New York Jets when they all that offseason leading up. We all knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to go number 1 to the Jacksonville Jaguars and that Zach Wilson was going to go number 2. And the debate began at 3, where is Chicago going to stick and pick there? Is San Francisco going to get into the mix with the trade up? Is it going to be Mac Jones, or is it going to be Trey Lance, or is it going to be Justin Fields, perhaps? The debate was never around Zach Wilson. People knew that the Jets were going to take him. They liked the BYU quarterback's tape. They loved the throws that they saw in the pro day. New York said, all right, let's go ahead and bring him in. And everything that transpired in the aftermath since then transpired and conspired to ruin Zach Wilson's start of his NFL career. It is, again, such a huge issue for young quarterbacks everywhere, and it's why Will Levis, to me, immediately popped into my mind. So the first thing that we will talk about is Zach Wilson, or rather Will Levis, within the context of this Zach Wilson trade. And the question that I'll ask you is this, your Two Rivers Ford take. What one thing, just one thing, and you can know multiple things about Will Levis as the Titans quarterback, but I'm just asking you for one thing that you definitively know about Will Levis as the Titans starting quarterback. Give me a trait. Give me an attribute. Give me something you like. Give me something that you don't like. It can be anything across the board, as long as you can say definitively that you know it to be so about Will Levis as the Titans starting quarterback. It is your Two Rivers Ford take. As is the custom, your Two Rivers Ford take is always presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. They go above and beyond to serve you, to put you as the customer in the driver's seat for the car buying experience. It's always fast, easy, and fun at Two Rivers, and you can't say that about hardly any other car dealerships. It's why Two Rivers is the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at Two Rivers Ford. Let Two Rivers Ford put you in your dream vehicle today. What one thing do you definitively know about the Titans quarterback? So he's played in 9 games. He started 9 games, and he has gone 3-6 in those games. Just to kind of recap his counting stats, they're not the most important thing, but they are, just a baseline measurement of what we have in this particular quarterback. He was an under 60% passer as a rookie, 58.4% completion of his passes, 1,808 yards, 7.1 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. We know that Will Levis's issues, or Will Levis's inability to help the Titans win or do any winning of consequence, was just as much the roster's fault as it was Will Levis's fault, because, of course, he sustained injury behind an offensive line that not only got Will Levis hurt, but it got Ryan Tannehill hurt and allowed total 64 sacks of 3 Titans quarterbacks when all 3 of them had to play in some form or fashion in 2023. So with that 9-game sample size, what do you definitively know about Will Levis as the Titans starting QB? Eddie Gortney says he carries a swagger. Yes, he's got big personality. He is somebody who on the field is fiery, is riled up, is in his teammates' ear, is in his coach's ear, is in people's faces. He has a passion that is palpable and can serve you really well to galvanize your football team. Now, some of this stuff, that goes beyond just swagger, though, right? That is effusive, and it's a kind of frenetic energy that carries itself out onto the football field. So whether you want to call it swagger or whether you want to call him a bit manic, I think it's probably somewhere in between. You just want him to find a bit of a balance with that, because Karen O'Keefe puts it more generally. He's a dog, D-A-W-G. I think that is a fair assessment of Will Levis. Let's see, his will to win, no plays off, says Tig. Well, can you have a will to? So he does have the will to win, of course, but does the will what? These are generalized, not concrete things that we're talking about, not quantifiable things, but he definitely displays that level of passion. Brandon simply says Will Levis is that guy. Saw the Miami game, saw the Falcons game, saw the Pittsburgh game, all behind a bad offensive line. Now, Brandon is citing 2 wins and a loss because they did go to Pittsburgh and lose. It was a close game, but they did ultimately fall short, and he threw, I'm not pinning it on him 100%, but he did throw the interception that effectively ended their comeback. EA says he likes mayonnaise, which we do definitively know about Will Levis, so much so that he's monetized his love of mayonnaise, which is funny to see. So I had Jordan Reed, my friend from ESPN, who's one of their great draft analysts, on the radio show. I believe this was Friday, and you can check out the full interview in the podcast on your favorite podcast page. Just search the Buck Rising Show. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. Or 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel, where we post all of the great interviews that I do and all of the interviews that all 4 shows do there, as well as live streamed on a regular basis. So I asked Jordan Reed at the end of an interview talking about draft prospects about Will Levis and what he made of the progress from Kentucky through his rookie year, and if he saw any progress of consequence that indicated Will Levis's growth and development as a player.
Will Levis here is a big question mark. I know talking to a lot of people at the Combine, there was more of we'll wait and see type of vibes. Titans fans are really excited about him, understandably so. He's a very talented player, but we got to see him put it together on a more consistent level. Is he, based on your evaluation of him coming out of Kentucky, is he kind of what you thought he might be, or are there some areas of his game that might have surprised you at the pro level based on the 9-game sample size, or where you want to see him still clean it up a little bit more?
I always thought Will was very talented. It was just the consistency with him. That was something that was always worrisome. And then just the turnover-worthy plays. That was the big thing that hurt him during his final season at Kentucky. And while he had a lot of wow moments, he also had a lot of head-scratcher moments. And I think that's something that he does need to clean up as far as what he needs to be, as far as being consistent as a starter on the next level. And you guys saw it. I mean, the talent is easy to see. He has a rocket arm. He's very mobile. Needs to do a better job of protecting himself. I still think he needs to do better in that aspect just because he's such a competitive guy. He's very fiery. He just takes a lot of unnecessary hits. So once he learns to slide, and then also once he learns to protect himself a little better, I think the game is going to come to him much more naturally. Now, with him, the accuracy is something that still needs to improve as well. And Will was never, I wouldn't say he's a natural thrower, but there is a little bit of stiffness to his game. I want to see him work out some of that stiffness to his game as well. He was never one of those guys that's like a smooth and easy and fluid thrower. So just working out some of the stiffness and then also just understanding how to protect himself a little more. I think those are the things that he can help take his game to the next level.
So that's Jordan Reed of ESPN expanding on some Will Levis analysis. A to Z Sports Prime Time is presented by Truma Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrumaFitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. TruMav is just there to put you in the best possible position to succeed, whether you are a group fitness class person, because many of you are. Some of us are intimidated by group fitness classes. That's okay. That was me at the start of it. I did not necessarily enjoy the group fitness classes until I started to go more, to get more comfortable, more confident, improve my physical fitness so that I could keep pace with the classes. But the classes are for people of every fitness level. They're just there to help you build upon your day-to-day progress. TrueMadFitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. So that's Jordan Reed breaking down Levis and kind of expanding on some of what we saw at Kentucky as a raw, toolsy player, but still a little more refined than your average NFL prospect because he's playing in a pro-style system, so he can manage a lot of these situations in real time. This is a thing, though, for Will Levis where he's far from a proven commodity. He's far from a finished product. And we'll talk about this later at the end of the show, which 2023 quarterback prospect between Levis and Bryce Young, Richardson, and Stroud are we buying stock in the most heading into 2024? Because when I look at Will Levis, and the question was, the Two Rivers Ford take was, what do you definitively know about this player? What I definitively know about Will Levis is that he is going to absolutely bust his ass to make sure that he is the best version of himself on a regular basis. Whether he is going to achieve that is a different question entirely. But the thing that I have zero questions about is that Will Levis is going to be the hardest worker on that football team. He consistently displays it. Sometimes he comes off a little over serious. Sometimes he can be a little too locked in, as we've seen on the sidelines. That's not always a good thing, even though people like the effusive energy and the electricity that he brings. It's beyond just heart. It's beyond just, red-faced screaming passion. This dude puts the work in to consistently improve himself. That's all I hear out of the facility. It's all I heard about him at Kentucky. No matter what positives or negatives about his skill set, his accuracy, his consistency, his footwork, his ability to, his mobility, right? The thing that I know definitively about Will Levis is that he is going to put the work in. Now, I'm certain that Zach Wilson put plenty of work in New York. I know that Trevor Lawrence is one of these grinders. This is not something that's unique to Will Levis, even though every quarterback displays these kind of things in different ways. Why I think that Zach Wilson is a cautionary tale, and by the way, for those of you who are not aware of the details, Zach Wilson was today traded from the New York Jets to the Denver Broncos in an exchange of a 7th-round pick. Well, let me get the specific details, because I know that there was also a 7th-round pick sent back to the Jets from the Broncos, and I want to make sure that I get this right. Compensation update on Zach Wilson. The Jets and the Broncos are splitting $5.5 million that Wilson is due this season. Jets are paying 2.75. Broncos are paying 2.75. That is also a situation where with Zach Wilson, the Broncos are getting the Jets are getting a 7th-round pick for the trade. So Trevor Lawrence is the only player from his original to be drafted by his team to still be with his original team from that draft class. Zach Wilson has been traded. Trey Lance has been traded. Justin Fields has been traded. Mac Jones all traded. And that's just in line with Kenny Pickett. Sam Howell got moved. Desmond Ridder. All of these quarterbacks got traded. And it's not like any of them were bad prospects. All of these guys were first-round picks, right? That's 5 of them and only 1 that still remains with their original team. And even Trevor Lawrence isn't a completely sure thing commodity. David Brown says something that I think is going to be the criticism from a lot of people, but that I think ignores the larger issue with Zach Wilson. And that's okay. I'm not saying that I just think it's a bit misguided, the opinion here, David. He says QBs from a gimmick college offensive scheme rarely have NFL success. Let me add something to that, okay? QBs from a gimmick college offensive scheme rarely have NFL success when they're asked to play right away, is the thing that I would put in here. It is the biggest feather in Patrick Mahomes, or rather Andy Reid's cap, is that they didn't have to play Patrick Mahomes right away. Would you describe Texas Tech and the offense that Patrick Mahomes came from under Cliff Kingsbury to be the conventional offense? No, 100%. Patrick Mahomes appeared, I believe, in 1, maybe 2 games. And I only started 1 for sure his rookie season. And that was when I believe the Chiefs had the playoffs in hand. Alex Smith was sat or did sit for that particular game. I want to say it was a game against the Broncos, as a matter of fact. Either way, Pat didn't have to get out there right away. They gave Pat Mahomes time to grow and develop. Now, that's not to say that Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have turned into this fire-breathing dragon of a quarterback that he is anyway. But the urgency that the top drafted quarterbacks feel to get out on the field right away, typically for really shitty offenses behind really poor offensive lines on really bad football teams who are probably changing coaches because everybody got fired, this, that, and the other. This is something that is more recent than you would give it credit for, right? There are plenty of, look at Jordan Love. Jordan Love coming out of Utah State. I have no idea whether Jordan Love would have been as successful as he was down the stretch last season if he'd have started right away, if Aaron Rodgers wasn't in his path to be a starting NFL quarterback. And of course, Jordan Love sat for way more than just 1 season. Brandon says Pat M was an anomaly. He's really not. When you look at the amount of quarterbacks that get the time to progress and how much more successful they are as a result when they're not thrown into the fire right away, when they're not thrown behind. The Jets have a worse offensive line than the Titans do. Think about that. Zach Wilson has been playing behind an offensive line that has been hurt, that has been injured, that has been miserable, that has had draft busts. Mekhi Becton, he's not quite Isaiah Wilson, but still, they have tried and tried and tried to address that offensive line in front of Zach Wilson to no avail, and it has helped contribute to the problem. I'm not saying that Zach Wilson doesn't have some degree of blame in this. Of course, when this fails as spectacularly as it does, there's some failure. There is some blame placed on the coaching staff, the organization that drafted him with the inability to surround him with talent, and on the player himself, because not all of these things are done within a vacuum. But I do think that it serves as a cautionary tale, not just for Will Levis, but for Bryce Young, but for Anthony Richardson, that if you do not get these guys in a position to be supported, if you are going to play them right away, i.e. Caleb Williams, who is coming into the best possible situation that a first overall pick probably ever has, this is a huge, huge deal. So while I look at this and I say, I don't think that Will Levis is going to end up being Zach Wilson, I have seen far more quarterbacks get ruined than have great success, and Zach Wilson is just the latest to serve as a cautionary tale. Zach Wilson with a way higher draft pedigree than Will Levis. I think there would be some debate as to who was the better pro prospect coming out of college, because obviously Will Levis slipped to the second round and Zach Wilson went second overall. It is a really interesting it's a really interesting case study to do, but only 40% of first-round quarterbacks hit league-wide, year after year, for all the time, all the money, all the manpower, all the investment that is made into finding out as much as humanly possible about the quarterbacks. They still get botched more often than not. More than half the time, the quarterbacks get ruined. And I don't think it's primarily on the quarterbacks. I think it's primarily on the teams. A to Z Sports Prime Time. Let's keep it moving. Well, let me ask you this question before we move on, because Will Levis is a part of this next discussion. Of the 2023 top quarterback prospects, so we'll include Levis in this, even though he wasn't a first-round pick, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Which of the four are you buying stock in most heading into their second season? Young, Stroud, Richardson, or Levis? We'll talk about it together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $1,000 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. They also have same game parlays for you to maximize your profits in the Zen Sports app. All you need is that promo code ATOZTN. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789, zensports.com, promo code ATOZTN to get in on all the action. So Stroud for sure at the top of the list because he's had the most success and won the division as a rookie. He has accomplished things statistically that no other rookie quarterback has ever done. So, of course, I'm going to see a lot of love for C.J. Stroud here. Lewis is going with Levis. Jay Thomas disagrees. He says it's Stroud, not even close, as does David Brown, Randy Cherry. Justin Rubini says Stroud and Levis. No, that's not the game. You have to pick one. So you either pick Stroud or Levis. Justin is fence sitting, so he's scared. Levis for David Johnson. Nobody going with Bryce Young. Nobody going with Anthony Richardson that I've seen so far. Stroud 1, Levis 2 for Steven Rodriguez. Jason Martinez says Stroud is a problem. David Brown said, what happened with the S2 scores this year? Agents told the players not to take them. If you're going to leak this shit, if CJ Stroud is going to get dragged with an S2 score that isn't really a part of the draft process, and this company down the road from us in Franklin is, subjecting a lot of NFL players to and having mixed results without verifiable, quantifiable impact on the players that they'll become, as evidenced by CJ Stroud. Now, it's not like the Wonderlic was any kind of perfect scientific measurement either, but agents straight up told players, don't take it this year. Don't mess with it. If they're going to leak with the results, if the results are going to be out there, because CJ Stroud, of course, got dragged for that in the pre-draft process. It didn't impact the team that took him. Texans didn't have any doubt in their mind. But yeah, when you get the agents working against you, you're pretty well banged. So that's a really big deal for S2 to have that kind of bad PR and that kind of leakage with their operation. Tig says, I can't be fair. It's got to be Levis. Well, then you're entitled to that opinion. Plenty of people agree with you. Derek Wright says Will Levis. Jack's junk removal says Young, fourth place schedule, should do better. Stroud with a first place schedule probably won't play as good as he did last year. And that's the question. That's for this coming year. Whose stock are you buying the most? Bryce Young is the stock is going to be low, right? After what happened in 2023, after what happened in his rookie season, it was a catastrophic rookie season that saw his head coach get fired in the middle of the season, that saw him have to change offensive play callers a bunch of times. But I'm not going with any of the three. The player that I'm buying the most stock in heading into 2024, give me Anthony Richardson.
So, and last year, again, you were kind enough to let the Roku channel and NFL Films cameras into the draft room for that outstanding documentary, The Pick Is In, and just watching you just wait and just hold on for I guess, dear Anthony Richardson life, 4th overall, to see a trade happen right before you, and then you learned it was the Texans again, and you knew you were going to get the quarterback that you were going to get. What do you think of? How do you get through a moment where you know you got to hold tight, Chris? Walk me through stuff like that on a draft night for you.
It's even better when you got your owner and your head coach sitting right next to you. And we don't need to trade up. We'll be fine. We're going to get the guy we want it for. And then all of a sudden there's a trade. And I'm just thinking, oh, you got to be freaking kidding me. And, it gets a little tense moment. But, we do our work and our research, and we're not 100% always right. But you just feel good about the preparation and work that your team has done to put yourself in position and to hopefully, it's an inexact science anyways, getting this thing right. But when you're at number 4, where we were last year, it's a little, look, there's only 3 guys that can go in front of you. So it's a little easier to at least hopefully figure that out.
And in terms of Anthony Richardson, how is he, Chris?
He's good. No, he's good. He's throwing. He's not fully cleared medically yet, but he's getting close. He's worked really hard to come back. I think I told y'all at the combine when I saw y'all, Shane and I had watched him throw on that Sunday, and you would never know he was hurt. He threw the other day and looked great. So now it's just building up strength, making sure he finishes the rehab the correct way, and get moving forward so we'll be ready for OTAs, which we think he will be.
Give me some insight, because I heard this, offline at the combine about how much of a professional he is already, despite having snaps on the field. Well, reveal the curtain, pull back the curtain a little bit on what he's been like around the building despite not playing, Chris.
He's look, with any player that gets hurt, it's hard on him because it's hard to feel a part of it. It's human nature. And what I really appreciated about Anthony was, sometimes, and like I told him, I said, there's always light in the darkness, Anthony. And I said, I know right now it feels dark, but if you can use this time to really grow, both physically as you rehab, but also mentally. And he went to work. And he's a really fun kid to be around. He's just, what I love the most about, he's the same guy every day. Like, there's not these highs and lows with him that, some people have and some players have. He's the same guy every day. And I know he spent a lot of time working, with not only with me, just visiting about life in general, but then Shane and, our staff, it was great for him to learn. Sometimes watching is a good thing.
So that is Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Colts, talking about Anthony Richardson. Now, why would I pick Anthony Richardson out of the 4 quarterbacks, given that Anthony Richardson has the smallest sample size, has done the least out of any of the 4 at the professional level? Derek says, get a room. Bizarro PK says, are you going to buy stock in a quarterback who barely played and hurt his throwing arm? Yes, 100%. That is what I am going to do, because there is not going to be stock lower of the four than Anthony Richardson. The game is which player, which quarterback, which of the four quarterbacks stock are you buying the most? CJ Stroud stock is going to be the most expensive. That's the easiest thing to do. It's not going to have return on investment that way to pay off because the stock's already high. It can't be higher. CJ Stroud won the division last year, set all kinds of records as a rookie quarterback. Looks like he should be on track to improve upon that standing. Levis played enough to be interesting, but is still a giant question mark. I would stack it this way: Richardson, Levis, Stroud, and Young. Young, I think, is in the worst possible position. The odds are already against him because of the physical deficiencies that he had. And I just, there are moments that even in a bad situation, Levis was able to show that he's special, right? I didn't get that from Bryce Young as a pro. I didn't get that in his rookie season. All I saw was an undersized quarterback struggling and fighting for his life behind a terrible offensive line and a defunct offense. So I looked at this and said, of all the players, of all four players, which one would pay me off the most return on investment wise if I was to buy low on them? There is not going to be lower stock of any of the four than Anthony Richardson. I love the athletic upside. It's the same reason that he went third overall in that NFL draft, or rather fourth overall in that NFL draft after the two quarterbacks went 1 and 2, and then the Texans traded up for Will Anderson. What Indianapolis is betting on is that he takes a Josh Allen-like jump and turns into some kind of Cam Newton, Josh Allen type of player with all the arm strength in the world, with all the athletic gifts in the world. There's never been a better athlete at the quarterback position by combine measurements than Anthony Richardson. Bizarro PK says, I have lost too much money in the market, and obviously misunderstood the question. Yes, the question is which, and perhaps I should have phrased it differently, but I do think that when I ask you guys which one are you buying stock on the most, you should look at it. And maybe not all of you play the stocks, and I'm not acting like I'm any kind of day trader. I have a financial advisor that manages one portfolio that I have, and then my mom has been doing a lot of the stock portfolio management my entire life, because instead of birthday presents, what I got for birthday presents was stock options, and even as a very, very little kid. So that's something that she's been on from day one, which I'm greatly appreciative of, because that's going to be huge for me one day, especially as a retirement option. But looking at playing the stocks, you want to buy the stock the lowest that is going to pay you the highest dividend. And I think that as I look at this with Anthony Richardson, I think that has the biggest return on investment. Of course, if he can stay healthy is the biggest question. And I think that it's a completely fair question. He plays recklessly. There's clips from week 1 of him and Trevor Lawrence giving him some advice. Hey, just take care of yourself out there. It's a very violent sport, and it's very easy to get hurt. And he had concussions right away and popped his shoulder out of the socket against the Colts in like week 5 and didn't play the rest of the season. So this is not inconsequential, and it's not without huge risk. There is a ton of risk around Anthony Richardson. But like I said, I don't think any of a player, maybe Young's stock would be lower, but I think that Anthony Richardson is the biggest unknown commodity with the biggest potential return on investment, which is why my answer would be Anthony Richardson. I think Levis is second in that discussion. I think that Levis is as much an unknown. I think a lot of people are going to be betting against Will Levis, just as they're going to be betting against Anthony Richardson. I think both have real potential to turn this into something special, provided that they get the proper help. Indianapolis is a better roster than Tennessee is. To date, we'll see what both teams do in the draft. Tennessee could very, very easily pull even if they hit on this particular rookie class. But the clock is ticking, because you have to find out if you have a quarterback of the future in Will Levis this year. This is the definitive year for Will Levis. And it starts on Thursday night if they can get him some left tackle help potentially. All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. A quick reminder that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress with the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators at GaryAshton.com. They'll put you in position to succeed. Edward Hayford wants to now argue with me. Colts do not have a better roster than the Titans. Buck, stop. Okay, well, of course they do. They have a significantly better roster. They have drafted significantly better. You have made splashier trades. I like your wide receivers better than I like the Colts wide receivers, but top to bottom, which roster pre-draft do I trust more? I'm 100% taking the Colts. I would still put the Titans 4th out of 4 in the division. I don't. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I would put the Titans 3rd out of 4. I don't trust the Jags roster at all. I think the Jags roster is in a weird spot. I think they don't really have a direction or don't seem to have a plan. The Calvin Ridley screw up is huge for them. So I would put again, pre-draft. They haven't drafted anybody yet. So I would put the Jags at the bottom of the list. I would go Texans, Colts, Titans, Jags. We'll see what happens with the draft. But we're not going to have to wait that much longer because we're only, 3 more sleeps away? It'll be a good time. That's going to do it for us tonight. We got a loaded show on the radio show tomorrow. We have Mike Keith, the voice of the Titans. Mike Keith is going to be on the radio show at 10:20. I believe Ben Jones is also going to be a part of the radio show tomorrow. That will be a great time. We will discuss the draft plans for Titans Radio. They're going to do all 3 nights for the first time ever, which is huge. So you can get your live and local coverage, even more live and local with Titans Radio. They will have you in position to succeed. So you can check out that as well as all the other things that we're going to do from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone tomorrow, and have a great rest of your evening. In the meantime, don't worry, we'll come back right afterwards after the radio show and do another primetime show because that's what we do. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on 104.5 The Zone.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville. Go home!